He wasn't even diabetic. That's what one family member said after learning the truth. Their loved one didn't pass from illness. It was something else, something no one expected. And he wasn't the only one. This is the case of Reta Mays, the nurse at a VA hospital whose quiet shifts concealed a deadly pattern. You're watching Unread Files. A quiet presence. Reta Mays wasn't the kind of person anyone suspected. She had no criminal history, no formal complaints from co-workers, no obvious motive. She worked nights at the Louis A. Johnson V, a medical center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Her position didn't require a license. She couldn't prescribe medicine or administer complex treatments. Her role was meant to be simple: assist patients, record observations, and report anything out of the ordinary. Something felt off. But starting in mid-2017, something began happening during the overnight shift. Patients who had been stable during the day were suddenly experiencing severe medical crashes overnight. Most were elderly veterans recovering from manageable conditions. Then their blood sugar would plummet, without warning and without a clear cause. At first, no one saw a pattern. Their ages, histories, and complications made the outcomes seem unfortunate but explainable. Some were labeled heart failure, others pneumonia or respiratory distress. Each incident was treated as isolated. But one death changed everything. The case that broke it open. Felix McDermott had been admitted for a short-term infection. He wasn't considered high risk. In fact, he was showing signs of improvement. Then, out of nowhere, he declined rapidly. The hospital reported pneumonia as the cause. But when the family requested a more thorough examination, a toxicology report revealed something unexpected. His insulin levels were extremely high. But Felix wasn't diabetic, and no insulin had been ordered. That detail triggered a deeper investigation. The hospital contacted the Department of Veterans Affairs, and soon, federal investigators were involved. Patient records were pulled, shift schedules analyzed, security footage reviewed. The patterns became clear and disturbing. 7 patients had experienced the same rapid, unexplained drop in blood sugar. All had received care on the night shift. None were prescribed insulin, and all had one thing in common: Reta Mays was on duty. No explanation. Reta didn't come forward immediately. She didn't offer an explanation or apology. She said little when questioned, but investigators discovered more than enough to move forward. Her search history included phrases like insulin overdose and female serial killers. She had browsed articles about healthcare professionals involved in suspicious deaths. And she had researched symptoms of insulin shock. She also kept handwritten notes. In one entry, she described her job as overwhelming. She mentioned feeling trapped, unappreciated, and invisible. But nothing in her writings pointed directly to her actions. It was as if she wanted someone to notice, but not stop her. Co-workers later said she had mood swings. She was sometimes irritable, sometimes withdrawn. But no one suspected she might be behind the unusual number of overnight emergencies. Looking back, it seemed obvious, but at the time, the idea didn't cross anyone's mind, and so the pattern continued, unchecked, for nearly a year. The survivors and the charges. One of the surviving patients, identified in court documents only by initials, nearly died but recovered. His glucose levels had dropped dangerously low, but he was stabilized in time. That case was key in confirming the pattern. In July 2020, 2 years after the last suspicious incident, Reta Mays was formally charged. She pled guilty to 7 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. She admitted to administering unauthorized doses of insulin. Courtroom silence. During sentencing, the courtroom was filled with families, children, spouses, siblings of the men who had trusted the VA to care for them. Some had never been told there was anything suspicious about the deaths. Others had fought for years to get answers. One family member told the court, You stole my father's final moments. You stole the truth. Reta, in a quiet voice, said she was sorry. But when asked why she had done it, she gave no reason. She said she didn't know. The judge didn't accept that explanation. He called her actions deliberate and repeated. He sentenced her to 7 life terms, 1 for each veteran, plus 20 years for the survivor. She will never be eligible for parole. The hospital's role. But the courtroom wasn't the only place facing consequences. The VA hospital came under intense scrutiny. How could this have happened in a federal facility? Why wasn't insulin inventory tracked more closely? Why were overnight incidents not reviewed more thoroughly? Internal investigations revealed multiple gaps in oversight. Medication logs were incomplete. Security systems weren't fully reviewed, and deaths weren't being consistently evaluated for toxicology testing. In the wake of the scandal, the Department of Veterans Affairs paid over $5 million in settlements to the families. No hospital staff were criminally charged, but administrative changes were made. Protocols were updated. Staff were retrained. And for some families, that still wasn't enough. The damage was done. Trust was lost. And nothing could bring back the people they had buried, believing their deaths had been peaceful and natural. A permanent silence. Reta Mays now spends her days in a federal prison. She hasn't granted interviews. She hasn't written letters or spoken out since her sentencing. There's no published explanation, just silence. Some experts believe her actions were about power, that in a job where she felt invisible, she found a way to assert control. Others think she had undiagnosed psychological conditions, perhaps rooted in trauma or resentment. But none of that has been confirmed. What remains is a string of unexplained actions with devastating consequences. A series of lives lost in silence. And a system that didn't catch the pattern until it was too late. In the end, this case isn't just about one woman. It's about the danger of assumptions, the need for checks and accountability, and the silent cost of institutional failure. Because the people she hurt weren't just patients. They were fathers, brothers, soldiers, and for a year, no one realized they were being taken one by one. You've been watching Unread Files. If you want more real cases like this, subscribe for more videos. And if you have thoughts on what drove Reta Mays, or how this could have been prevented, leave a comment.